If you've ever rented a storage unit, you probably know that quiet, eerie feeling the hallways have at night. The fluorescent lights buzz just a little too loud, the metal doors echo if anyone so much as touches them, and the long, narrow aisles feel like they go on forever. But nothing prepared me for what I saw the night I stopped by my unit close to midnight and met the woman who wasn't supposed to be there. It started with something small, just a box of tools I needed for work the next morning. The plan was to grab it and leave. I'd done this before. But the second my truck rolled into the complex, I got a weird feeling in my stomach. The place looked different at night. The cold yellow lights flickered in slow, irregular pulses, lighting the rows of steel doors in this sick, washed-out glow. I parked, stepped out, and immediately noticed one of the units halfway open about 30 feet down. Just a thin gap between the ground and the metal door, like someone had forgotten to close it, or didn't plan to. That alone wasn't strange. What was strange was the shadow I saw moving behind it, slow, uneven, like someone leaning forward, searching for something with their hands. I kept walking toward my own unit, trying to mind my business. The complex wasn't huge, and the aisles always carried sound. I could hear the person in the open unit shifting things around, except it didn't sound like rummaging. No boxes sliding, no bags moving, just this irregular rustling like fabric brushing against metal. When I got close enough, I glanced in. There was a woman standing in the middle of the unit. Or more specifically, she was hunched over, her back toward me, hair hanging low over her shoulders, arms extended stiffly in front of her as if she was about to pick something up, but her hands weren't touching anything. They hovered a few inches above the boxes, perfectly still. Almost like she didn't know what she was supposed to do with them. I slowed down without even meaning to. Her clothes looked old, like something from a few decades back. A long, washed-out sweater and a skirt that didn't match. Everything about her looked misplaced, out of time. I didn't want to stare, so I hurried past and reached my own unit. I unlocked it, lifted the door, quietly, and grabbed my box. The whole time I could feel the presence of that half-open unit behind me. Even though she wasn't doing anything, the atmosphere felt charged, like the hallway itself was holding its breath. I shut my unit's door, locked it, and that's when I heard it. A whisper so close, it sounded like it brushed the back of my neck. "Do you know where he went?" I didn't move at first. I didn't even breathe. The voice was soft, shaky, almost pleading, but wrong. It had this distant echo to it, like it wasn't meant to be heard by someone alive. I turned slowly. The woman wasn't in her unit anymore. She was standing directly across the aisle from mine, head down, hair completely covering her face. Her arms hung straight at her sides now, unmoving. The half-open door she'd been behind before was still cracked exactly the same way, untouched. My heart started pounding. I took a step back. She didn't react. Then she smiled. I didn't see her eyes. I didn't see her face. Just her mouth, pale lips stretching into this thin, unnatural grin that kept rising, like someone pulling a string from each corner. It wasn't friendly. It wasn't even human. It looked like someone trying to imitate a smile without understanding what it was. She tilted her head slightly and whispered again, "I've been waiting." That was enough. I backed up until I was almost running. My footsteps echoed too loudly, bouncing between the metal doors as I sprinted to my truck. I jumped in, locked the doors, and turned the ignition so fast the key nearly snapped. I checked the mirrors. She wasn't in the aisle. She wasn't near my unit. But then I looked straight ahead. At the entrance of the corridor, right under the flickering light, the woman stood perfect and still. Same posture, same hanging hair, facing me like she'd been there the whole time. And this time, she wasn't smiling. She was frowning, almost disappointed. I floored it out of the lot without looking back. When I got home, I tried convincing myself I imagined it, that she had been some late-night renter messing with me. But the next morning, I got a mass email from the storage company. "Our condolences to the family of the previous occupant. Unit 112 will remain closed as we prepare it for re-inspection." Unit 112, the half-open one. Confused, I called the front desk and told them I saw a woman there the night before. The manager went quiet on the phone and finally said, "That unit's been locked from the inside for years. Nobody has rented it since the accident." An accident? He didn't elaborate. I later found out the truth from another employee. The woman who rented it had died there almost a decade earlier, found collapsed inside the unit after searching for something she claimed her missing son had left behind. No one ever found out what she was looking for. And the worst part? The employee swore to me that the lock to Unit 112 hasn't been touched since the police sealed it, meaning whoever or whatever I saw wasn't supposed to be walking through that hallway, and it sure as hell wasn't alive. If you've ever worked at a gas station overnight, you know it's a different world past midnight. The lights feel brighter, the silence feels heavier, and every small sound echoes through the empty aisles like someone else is there with you. The night shift was supposed to be easy, quiet, predictable, boring. But the night that Silver Sedan pulled into Pump 5, I learned why so many old gas station attendants quit without giving notice. It was around 2 a.m., that strange in-between hour where the whole world feels paused. The road was completely dead, no headlights, no engines passing, just the humming of the overhead canopy lights and the low drone of the refrigerators inside. I was restocking the drink cooler when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. Finally, a customer. I checked the monitor above the counter. A silver sedan rolled slowly up to Pump 5, pulling to a stop like the driver wasn't really sure if they wanted to be there. The headlights stayed on, dull and yellowish, barely cutting through the mist that had settled over the lot. Nobody got out. I watched for a minute, expecting a door to open. It didn't. The car just sat there, engine rumbling like it was struggling to stay alive. I figured maybe the driver was on the phone or looking for their wallet, so I went back to what I was doing. After 5 minutes, it still hadn't moved. Another few minutes passed. Still nothing. The weirdness didn't really hit me until I noticed something else. Every window of the car was fogged up from the inside. Not just lightly fogged, completely covered like someone had been breathing heavily in there for a long time. Except one. The rear passenger side window had a perfectly clear circle in the fog. A flawless wipe mark, like someone dragged their hand across the glass from the inside. That's when something moved behind it. Just a faint shift in the darkness, like a head turning. I tried to convince myself I imagined it, but the feeling that something was wrong kept growing. After another minute of watching the silent car, I stepped outside. The cold air hit me immediately. The night felt unnaturally still. Even the insects were quiet. I made my way toward Pump 5, watching the fog-covered windows as I walked. When I got close enough to see inside the driver's window, nothing. Just darkness. Heavy fog. Shadows. "Hey," I said gently, tapping the glass. "You okay in there?" No movement, so I knocked harder. The moment my knuckles hit the window, I heard it. 3 slow, deliberate knocks right behind me. On the rear passenger window. I whipped around so fast I nearly slipped. But there was no one there. Nobody in the back seat, nobody in the front. And the imprint of the wiped circle on the window looked fresh, like a face had just pulled away from it. It felt like the air around me tightened. I stepped back, heart pounding, and that's when I noticed something else. The driver's seat was empty. No keys in the ignition, no lights on inside. Nothing. But the engine was running. I backed away slowly, trying not to take my eyes off the car. When I got inside, I locked the door behind me and grabbed the radio. My coworker, Danny, was in the back room doing inventory. "Hey," I said. "There's something wrong with this car at Pump 5. She came up front and checked the screen." "Where's the driver?" "I don't know," I said. "Nobody's in it." She frowned. "Then how's it running?" That question sank into my stomach like ice water. We agreed to call the sheriff. This wasn't the kind of situation we wanted to handle ourselves. While we waited, Danny and I stayed by the window, watching the sedan sit motionless under the canopy lights. And then it happened. The fog on the back window began to move, on its own, like invisible fingers were tracing lines across it. Not words, not shapes, just slow, shaky swipes, getting faster, more frantic. I stepped back from the glass. Danny whispered, "What the hell?" Before either of us could react, the sedan suddenly lurched forward, tires screeching so loudly the sound ripped through the silent night. It swerved out of the lot, engine screaming like it was moments from dying, and shot down the highway without stopping. The sheriff arrived about 20 minutes later. An older guy, calm, experienced, someone who had seen enough weird things not to be rattled. After we explained everything, he just stared at the empty pump for a long moment. "What color was the car?" he asked. "Silver," I said. "Old model, headlights dim, windows fogged." His expression changed. "Was it a sedan?" he asked. "Four-door." "Yeah." He sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Then he told us something I still think about. That same car, same description, was found abandoned 4 days ago on Route 19. We had it towed. The owner hasn't been located. Danny asked, "Was the driver missing?" "Yeah," he said quietly. "But that's not the part that concerns me." I'll never forget the way he looked at us before he continued. According to the case file, there was only one confirmed occupant that night, a teenage girl, missing for 8 years. Her fingerprints were found on the back window. My stomach dropped. "And the fog?" I asked. He nodded. "Same pattern, same wiped circle, same seat." I didn't sleep when my shift ended. I didn't even drive home. I sat in the break room with the lights on until sunrise, trying to convince myself we misidentified the car, that it was a coincidence, that the face, or whatever I saw in that wiped circle, wasn't real. But 2 weeks later, another report came through. A silver sedan, same model, same plates, abandoned again. This time, deep in the woods off an old hiking trail. The engine was cold, the keys were still missing, and the only thing inside was the fog, thick, damp, covering every window, except one perfect, clear circle in the back, like someone had been watching, waiting for someone to knock. If you've ever lived in an older apartment building, you know the walls carry every sound. Footsteps become amplified, pipes groan louder at night. Even someone dropping a remote can echo through the ceiling like a hammer. You tell yourself it's normal. You tell yourself you'll get used to it. And I honestly thought I had, until the night I realized the noises from the apartment above me didn't belong to anyone living. The place I moved into was cheap, clean enough, and in a quiet part of town. It wasn't perfect, but it was what I could afford at the time. My unit was on the bottom floor of a 3-story building. The place above mine had a tenant who kept to himself, or at least that's what I assumed during my first week there. I never saw him, never heard a door open or close, but at night, around 1 or 2 a.m., I would hear slow footsteps pacing across the floor. Not walking, more like dragging. Like someone was shuffling their feet while moving back and forth across the room with no real purpose. The first few nights I didn't mind. People have their routines. Maybe he worked night shift or had insomnia. Maybe he liked to pace. So I brushed it off. But by the end of that first week, I noticed something else. The pacing didn't stop. Not for hours. And the rhythm never changed, never sped up, never slowed down. It was the exact same pattern every night. 12 steps from one end of the apartment. Pause, 12 steps back, over and over, for hours. I counted one night, 1 hour straight of pacing, 1 hour of the exact same pattern. It didn't feel normal. It felt mechanical, like something repeating an action it didn't fully understand. One night around 3 a.m., I was brushing my teeth when I heard it again. The dragging, the soft thuds, the shifting weight. But then something new happened, something I hadn't heard before. A voice, very faint, muffled, like someone crying into their hands. At first, I thought it was a TV, but it wasn't. There were no changes in tone, no dialogue, no background noise. Just a person crying quietly, the sound trembling through the ceiling. But there was something strange about it, something that made my spine tighten. The crying sounded close, too close, like the person was directly above my bathroom. I shut the water off and listened. The crying stopped instantly. A full minute of silence passed. Then the pacing resumed. I didn't sleep that night. A few days later, I asked my landlord about the tenant above me. "Oh, him?" she said. Quiet guy, barely see him." That meant nothing. I wanted to ask more, but I didn't want to sound paranoid. So I went back to my routine and tried to ignore the nightly pacing. But every night, it got stranger. Sometimes I'd hear a loud, heavy thud like someone collapsing onto the floor. Other times, it sounded like furniture dragging slowly across the room. Once, around 4 a.m., I heard something that made my skin crawl. 3 sharp knocks, right above my bedroom, not on the wall, not on the pipes, directly above my bed, like someone knocking from the floor of the apartment above. I sat up immediately and stared at the ceiling. The knocks didn't repeat. Everything went still. Too still. The silence felt alive. I waited for the pacing to return, but that night it didn't. The next morning, I felt a tension in my chest the moment I walked into my living room. Something about the apartment felt off, heavier, like the air itself had changed. I told myself it was exhaustion, that I was overthinking things. But that night, things escalated. I woke up at exactly 3:06 a.m. to a sound that didn't belong in any normal apartment. Breathing. Not my breathing. Someone else's. Slow, deep, strained, coming from the ceiling. I sat up and listened, trying to steady my own breath. It wasn't the HVAC system. It wasn't pipes. It wasn't the wind. It was the unmistakable sound of someone trying to breathe through pain. Sharp inhales, followed by long, shaky exhales. Every exhale vibrated through the wood above me, like the person was lying flat on the floor, right above my bed. I whispered to myself, "No, no, no, no," and scrambled out of the room, grabbing my phone. I stood in the hallway, staring up at the ceiling. The breathing did not follow me. It stayed in my bedroom, fixed to one spot. When I worked up the nerve to check again, the sound had stopped. The pacing did not return that night, nor the next night, nor the one after. But the crying got louder. One night it grew into full, uncontrolled sobbing, guttural, choked, painful, so loud it shook the vents. It sounded like someone mourning, someone breaking apart, someone realizing something horrible far too late. I couldn't take it anymore. The next morning, I went straight to the landlord's office. "I'm sorry, but I need to talk to the tenant upstairs," I told her. "I think something's wrong. I hear him pacing, crying, knocking." Her whole expression changed in an instant. "What tenant?" "The guy in the unit above me," I said. She shook her head. "That apartment is empty." My stomach dropped. "No, it's not," I said. "I hear him every night. He's up at all hours." She stood up, grabbed her keys, and said, "Come with me." We walked up the stairs to the second-floor hallway. She unlocked the door to the unit above mine. Empty. Not recently moved out, empty. Not someone packed up, empty. Empty. Dust on the counter, dust on the windowsills. No furniture. No appliances plugged in, no footprints, no signs of anyone living there. It looked like nobody had set foot in it for months. I walked slowly across the living room, heart thudding. The landlord followed me, arms folded, watching my reaction carefully. When I reached the middle of the room, directly above where my bedroom would be, something stopped me. 2 footprints, bare footprints, in the dust, side by side, pointing toward the window. They weren't mine. They weren't the landlord's. And they were recent. Too recent. The landlord froze. I could hear the change in her breathing behind me. "That wasn't here last week," she whispered. I crouched slowly, staring at the prints. The dust around them was disturbed, smudged outward like someone had turned in place, shifting their weight anxiously. The landlord backed toward the door. "We're leaving," she said. "Now." She called maintenance, had them check every room, every closet, every inch of the place. They found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no broken windows, no bed, no clothing, no evidence that anyone had been inside recently. But the footprints were still there. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I lay in my living room, TV on, lights on, trying to drown out the memory of that crying. At around 3 a.m., when the building had sunk into absolute silence, I heard something from upstairs, a single deep inhale, like someone waking up, then a footstep, one, hard, slow, then another, not pacing, not dragging, walking, directly toward the spot above where I was sitting. I grabbed my keys and left the apartment immediately, getting into my car and staying there until sunrise. Over the next few days, I avoided being home at night. I showered at the gym, slept in my car once. My nerves were completely shot. Every time I walked into the building, I felt watched. The air felt wrong, heavy, stagnant, like it didn't want me there. On my final night in that apartment, something happened that still keeps me awake sometimes. I was packing boxes in the living room, getting ready to move out the next morning. The sun had just gone down, everything was quiet. Then I heard it. Crying. Loud, raw, right above me, but it sounded different now, not distant, not muffled. It sounded like the person was crying directly into the floor, like their face was pressed against the wood. I stood there frozen, fingers gripping the cardboard box so hard it began to bend. The crying grew louder, more panicked. Then it turned into something else. Desperate gasps, someone trying to breathe through pain, someone failing. I backed away, heart racing, then 3 knocks, hard, aggressive, right above me. I dropped the box and sprinted outside. That night, I didn't go back in. The next morning, the landlord stopped me as I was loading my car. She hesitated, then said, "You mentioned crying." I nodded. She swallowed hard, then continued. "The last tenant in that unit, he was found on the floor. He collapsed, heart failure. He tried calling for help, but nobody heard him, not for a long time." My blood ran cold. "He was alone?" She nodded. By the time maintenance opened the door, he was lying face up near the living room window, like he had been trying to get someone's attention from below. I didn't respond, because all I could think about were the footprints pointing toward the window and the crying that I heard long after he died. When I finally drove away, I didn't look back at the building. But I swear, as I turned onto the main road, I heard a faint tapping against one of the windows on the second floor. 3 soft knocks, like someone still waiting for help. Help that would never come.